It's 9 a.m. It's Thursday morning. That's when the fun begins. It's Our Town on 94.9 and 99.1 The River. My name is Darren Swinson. Our Town, as always, brought to you by Decorah Bank and Trust. With us on the show this morning, a little later on, we will chat with State Representative Mike Bergan of Dorchester, Iowa Legislature, about a month away from getting underway for 2022. Health insurance exchange still open for sign up through January 15th. Now, yesterday was the sign up deadline to get signed up for January 1st, but you can still sign up through January 15th. And Brian Huinker from Group Benefit Partners in Decorah is our guy related to health insurance, and he will discuss all sorts of stuff with us here in a few moments. But good things going on related to health or childcare, I should say, here in the city of Decorah. The Sunflower Discovery Center project got a big time shot in the arm earlier this month. The fundraising for that project going very, very well as well. And our first guest this morning to discuss the Sunflower Discovery Center project is Stephanie Fromm from Wenatchee County Development and Tourism. We'll have that conversation right now as we open up Our Town, brought to you by Decorah Bank and Trust on 94.9 and 99.1 The River. Having a conversation this morning with Stephanie Fromm. She is the director of Wenatchee County Development and Tourism, and a lot of exciting things going on related to the Sunflower Discovery Center project, and so many things. I don't know where to start, Steph. That's probably a good thing, right?
I think if you'd ask anyone on our team, they'd probably say the same thing. It's been kind of a whirlwind, so it's been very exciting.
And getting the community attractions and tourism grant that you got very recently, how big of a shot in the arm was that for the project?
Oh, it was huge. You know, this was one of the grants that we had our eyes on well over a year ago. You know, that was one of the first that made our list to make sure we focus on. And it's a unique grant because it does require the city and the county to both contribute towards your project to show that they're in favor of it. So that's sort of what motivated us this summer to really start working with those public entities. And then, of course, they also require to be sort of that last money in. It is a tourism focused grant, which we do qualify for because of the Discovery Center side of the project. So we got to just focus on, it's essentially 36% of the facility itself. So it was a very good learning experience for me. That 220-page document that's now sitting in the corner of my office, I'm like, we need to somehow, you know, put together a really nice box for that application, just in case we ever need to go back and look at it.
And related to that, obviously, the financial aspect of that grant cannot be understated. But even when you step back and look at the bigger picture, how big of a message does that send, knowing the fact that the city, the county, and really the state believes in what you're doing? Yeah,
I mean, it was amazing to even just watch that grant panel talk about our project openly. I mean, they are open meetings with amongst, you know, the other 16, 18 different communities that were there proposing their own projects as well. And to give Decorah credit for attempting to, you know, attack that childcare desert or crisis head on, and essentially making tourists pay for it. You know, so it creates a value in childcare that no longer puts pressure on families to continue to have to raise rates and expect them to pay for the staff. It allows for us to sort of be this tourism attraction for our community that's already very popular, but to target those young people and to allow for learning spaces for everyone, not only Sunflower, but for all of our childcare providers throughout the region, the schools, the preschools, everyone will be able to access this indoor space.
And I think it's probably good to review what the this Discovery Center is going to be all about and how it connects to the childcare aspect of this. Probably a good time to review on how this will all interconnect, if you will. Can you do that for us now?
Yeah. So essentially, it's one business. Sunflower has sort of volunteered to be that entity that manages and owns the facility, but it's one building. You'll walk into the main entrance and you'll either go left to go to the child care center, or you'll turn right and that will be the Discovery Center wing. We're working with Ethos Design Group. They have an office in Decorah now. Originally they came from Ankeny, but they are kind of starting to spread throughout the state of Iowa, which is really, it's amazing to be able to work with someone local. They understand the community. They want to be involved and they're eager to sort of please, because they know how important it is to our local economy to have childcare, to have sort of an appealing building that not only attracts families, but also visitors. And that Discovery Center sort of wing, I would say one of the most popular questions early on was, well, this is just for 215 children. But no, the Discovery Center will be open on the weekends and during the evenings, during the weeknights, to allow for anybody who wants to just pay for a ticket or have an annual pass. Families will be able to have birthday parties there. You'll have trainings there. There's going to be training space in there. And then as well as any one entity, organization that has children or like preschools, NISI, Kinderhouse, Montessori, Decorah school system, Southwind, any of these school systems throughout Winneshiek County and beyond that want to come in and explore the Discovery Center with a group of kiddos, all they got to do is just schedule a time. I mean, everything's up to scheduling. So it's really exciting. Yeah.
And when it comes to your fundraising goal and where you're at right now, where give us the latest on that.
Yep, we just surpassed the $5.2 million mark. We're almost at 5.3, pushing it. We're hoping, our goal was to raise $1 million in the month of December, and we're just over halfway there. The overall goal, we're hoping to, honestly, we're hoping to raise the whole 9 million. But we can break ground and green light everything if we hit that $7 million mark. And it's not if we will break ground, it's just when. So if we can't quite get there this spring, obviously we'll do it in the fall to continue pushing the fundraising efforts. So our goal is to raise another $2 million locally. And then we're hoping to apply for additional grants and stuff over the next 6 months before we would break ground. Once you sort of start breaking ground, it sort of limits you in the number of grants that you can qualify for, because the grantors kind of see you as, oh, well, you're doing it anyways, you don't need our money. So we need to be sort of strategic about when and how we can apply for those grant funds. But I would say in the next 2 weeks, we have just over $2 million of grants that we are applying for. Now, whether or not we get it, we don't know, but we have one big one due tomorrow and another one due in the next couple of weeks. So we'll be busy. All of those require match funds, which is why it's so important for local donors to contribute to the project. And honestly, overall, I would say, there's limited projects in one's lifetime that are sort of this legacy sort of status. And if I could say anything to any individual, that's sort of my soapbox speech, is that this is going to be a project that's going to be around forever. And it not only impacts the lives of children now, but it will 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now, and your name could be on it.
And for those that want to contribute to this cause, how do they do so?
They can get a pledge form. They are available on the website. It is decorahdiscovery.org. They can swing by the chamber. We also have a stack of pledge forms right out front for any individual that's looking to just have a paper copy. You can print them off that website, or you can just fill out one online and it gets sent to me via email. Decorah Bank and Trust also has pledge forms available for anyone who would be looking for that. The pledges, I should say, can be spread over 5 years. So if you wanted to make a substantial gift over time, you most certainly can do that. We also accept any sort of assets or stocks as well. We do have a brokerage account now set up for sunflower, and there have been individuals that have been just kind of donating through their IRA or just donating, contributing stocks, and that way we can cash it out. It's a win-win for everyone, any way you look at it.
Anything else you want to pass on regarding this Sunflower Discovery Center project, or anything else related to WCDT, as long as you got the forum here this morning?
I would just thank all of our donors and our fundraising committee to date. I mean, that group has been so motivated from the start. I mean, just looking back just this morning at what we've accomplished in the last year, you know, raising $5.2 million and beyond is incredible. And Sunflower is a nonprofit. They've been around since 1975, and they're going home. I mean, that's the site we're going to on the hospital's campus is where Sunflower originally started, in a house. So it is extremely exciting to be able to do that for Sunflower. They have impacted so many of our lives, both myself and my husband and beyond. It's so great to be able to talk to community residents. It's almost every person you talk to, either their nephew or they themselves or their children have gone through that child care center, which is cool.
All right, Steph, we appreciate the update. Congrats on the success you guys are having raising funds for this legacy outside the box idea related to an important issue that we're all dealing with. Thanks for taking the time this morning, and most importantly, Merry Christmas to you, Zach, and the kids.
Thank you so much.
Stephanie Fromm from Wenatchee County Development and Tourism, our guest here this morning. Getting an update this morning on the sign up on the health insurance exchange. And when we talk health insurance and really life in general, and the 1996 Decorah State Championship boys tennis team and other factors, we go to our guy, Brian Huinker. Brian, always good to catch up with you.
Thanks for the props, Lance.
No doubt about it. Yesterday was one of the deadlines on the health insurance exchange if you wanted to get covered by January 1st, but sign up is continuing until January 15th. Explain the reasons for the extended sign up this year.
Well, I think the reason is they're trying to get my staff to quit. No. To be honest, I don't know why they extended it. It is kind of nice just because they're always at the end. There's some things that happen. So if maybe you're a person that let their plan automatically enroll, didn't pay attention, miss that time frame, you could still make a plan change. And like you said, it wouldn't go into effect January 1st, but it would go into effect February 1st.
And you mentioned yesterday was the deadline to get enrolled by January 1st. As for the people that came in and talked to you, how'd those signups go? How was business over this last month and a half?
Yeah, it was pretty smooth this year. The tax credits increased to cover the lion's share of the premiums for most of our folks. So I would say a positive experience. No new companies into the market. So I would say most people stayed with the plan they had, but it's always good to review if you have a surgery or something coming up next year. We can plan a little bit on the financial side for the out-of-pockets and deductibles and things that you might be able to make a better financial decision.
And from what I understand, there was a little bit of concerns in the not too distant past about local companies covering Gunderson here locally in the Decorah area. Have those concerns been alleviated?
Yeah, that's and I mean, not that it's about us and the ease of explaining things, but it sure does help that now both companies in our market, you can go to Winneshiek Medical Center, Gunderson, and any hospital in Iowa. It was difficult to explain. It kind of was tied to how the billings happened with Gunderson. That if you had Wellmark, you couldn't go to Gunderson here in Decorah. But that's alleviated as of July. The other thing, Darren, that's been a huge relief is that the income caps were lifted. So before a household of two, if they made, and don't quote me on the number, but it was like $70,241, they would lose all of their tax credit. And if they made $1 less, they would retain thousands of dollars of tax credit. So that was also a Hacker and Nelson and CPA and Jeff Olinger financial planning nightmare for people that, you had to keep your income on that dollar or less, or you lost, in some cases up to $30,000. It was a nightmare, but that part is lifted too. So it's a common sense, user-friendly setup now.
Are we seeing some stability in this health insurance market that perhaps when this legislation was originally passed that we didn't see?
Good question. Short answer, yes, for consumer prices, no for our national debt. The insurance companies, of course, are, the private sector is smarter and more nimble than the government. They've found a way, and probably justifiably so, based on claims and loss ratios. So I don't want to be negative toward them, but the price of insurance continues to go up. Medical inflation is 8 to 11% per year. So you hear about, everybody knows the price of sheetrock went up, but health insurance has been at this double-digit increase inflation wise for the last 8 years. Bottom line is that I guess the good news for the consumer is their prices are relatively the same. The bad news is that the government's paying twice as much as they did 6 years ago for the tax credit subsidy for the consumer to pay their plan.
Is there some concern about the stability of this going forward?
Not in my opinion. I mean, it's based on what we've seen for the last 8 to 10 years, a Democrat administration, a Republican administration, now Democrat administration, it has stayed stable in that regard. And there's over 15 million people on it. That's a lot of votes. And you and I both know, it's not about policy. It's not about doing the right thing. It's about getting reelected. And so I can't see either party taking this away.
And as for the folks that still need to sign out, maybe tweak their plan and get it done by January 15th, what's your message to them as of this time?
Yeah, I would say, I talked to a gentleman, a small business owner last night. A lot of folks do it on their own. It's not super complicated, but our message is that, things happen throughout the year with claims or not covered charges, coded improperly, that sort of thing. My message would be to use a local agent. Doesn't have to be us, can be anybody, but another set of eyes when it doesn't cost a penny more is always a good idea.
And what type of tweaks do you usually see like this time of year of the people that are wanting to make changes in their plan?
Good question. A lot of times it could be that you had a prescription drug change last year, sometime through 2021. So you might have been on an HSA style plan before. Now you could go to a copay plan where instead of paying a couple $100 a month for your drug, it might be $30 with a copay. Those sorts of things. And maybe you're pregnant or have a surgery expected next year. We'd want to reevaluate your plan and your network.
Any other message to folks looking for health insurance or maybe looking to tweak what they have as of this time?
Gosh, not in particular. Like, I mean, this sounds terrible, but I would not go online and try to do your own research. There's so much misinformation with the InstaFace and the, all that technology out there can be a nightmare. And best thing to do is talk to somebody in your community that does it and has the background.
Any word about MySpace being a reliable source of information?
Yeah. I'd also like to formally announce my candidacy for 2024 House of Representatives.
All right. Well, you got my vote, even though, well, I can't really vote for you where I live right
Yeah,
now.
that stinks.
So anyway, Hank, we appreciate you taking some time talking health insurance with us. So like you usually do, you look no worse for the wear. I mean, I know it's been a busy time for you and your staff and everybody in the insurance agency. Only see about 3-4 lines beneath the eyes. Your hair is combed. You're smiling ear to ear. Everything seems to be good, man.
I put a big old fingerprint on my camera, so it clouds it a little.
Anyway, Brian, we appreciate you taking the time. Most importantly, Merry Christmas to you, Amanda, and the kids. And I'm sure we'll be chatting here in the not too distant future.
I sure hope so. Good to see you, Swens.
Brian Huinker with Group Benefit Partners in Decorah, talking about health insurance. Sign up on the exchange continues until January 15th. We're about a month away from the start of the 2022 Iowa legislative session and getting a preview of the legislative session with State Representative Mike Bergan. And Mike, the news that came out this week, the Revenue Estimating Conference set their revenue projection. And right now, the state is looking at a 3% growth. Is that basically what most lawmakers were expecting?
Well, we've certainly seen significant growth during this calendar year. When the REC met last March, they gave a projection in which we set our current year's budget. But by the time they got to October, we saw well over $600 million in additional growth that was unexpected, that wasn't foreseen. So that certainly has given us opportunity to fill our coffers. We've got excess dollars in our system to work, as far as going forward. So I think we'll have adequate funding, expectations to meet our needs. We have to be cognizant that these carryover funds are one-time use dollars. They're going into a fund to be returned to taxpayers. And so that'll be one of the actions that we take during the session coming up.
And knowing the fact that financially the state is going to be in a stable situation, how does that perhaps change or differentiate the approach to what you want to do in the legislative session as compared to putting in new programs or, as you said, returning that money to taxpayers?
Well, certainly as we go forward, we've heard from a couple of senators that they may be looking at tax cuts, actually going so far as to look at eliminating income tax in Iowa. I think from the House perspective, we're going to take a long-term approach. We look at having our balanced budget, of having that sustainable over the next 5 years. We look at those projections. So certainly looking at reducing their tax rates is something that I'm sure will be on the agenda.
And I know a couple of state senators have, as you mentioned, said that eliminating the state's income tax should be something that should be looked at. How does the state actually go about doing that?
Well, I think their goal is fairly ambitious. They anticipate that it would be something that need to be phased in over time. But I think we'll deal with more or less the present of actually, we've just passed a tax cut reduction in our state income tax this spring. That's coming into effect, knowing that some of the surplus coincides with federal funding that's come through the system. It stimulated our economy, at least on the short term. We need to look at things that are sustainable over time. Potential downturns, impacts of inflation is something that we haven't really dealt with for over the past 10 years. So all of those factors will be considered as we look at our options.
And you just touched on inflation. Other than that, are there any concerns about the state's finances moving forward?
Well, certainly inflation has an effect of actually increasing revenues to the state. But also we have to look at how those costs, those expenses that were funded by the state are dealt with and managed. Certainly the COVID pandemic has had some temporary influences. It certainly had impacts in our health field, both for long-term care, hospital care, Medicaid financing, and so we'll be looking at that. But it has had ramifications throughout Iowa, particularly as we look at labor shortages and having adequate workforce in manufacturing and in transportation industry.
Is the state's reserve funds back where they need to be?
We've got our set aside at 100%, and then anything additional has been set aside into a fund to be returned to taxpayers, and that's about $1.2 billion at this point in time.
You touched on the labor shortage. I know there's a lot of help wanted ads out there, and a lot of businesses looking for work. There's more demand for job openings than there seems to be employers filling those positions right now. As a state government, what can you do to help alleviate those situations? Or is this something that perhaps is going to be temporary, and once things get back to a bit more normal, things can move in the right direction?
Well, certainly our workforce has been an issue even before COVID. And our governor set out a plan of action, and we've been in the process of that over the last 2 sessions. We've implemented some laws around our workforce, rebuilding our workforce, our skilled workforce, supporting of our community colleges and some of those technical skills, and working through apprenticeship programs. So those incentives have already been out there, they're in place, and they're actively working at this point in time. We're also have looked at child care as it impacts availability of our workforce. Iowa House passed 9 bills this last session. 4 of those were enacted. There's 4 more that are still pending for action in the Senate this year. So we'll continue to look at those options. The governor has had her workforce, child care workforce task force gave their report. The task force aspects will be implemented. Many of those actually coincided with our legislative work to date. And so we'll continue to look at ways to build on those recommendations. And the third aspect is housing. Certainly having affordable housing, modern housing that meets the needs of our workforce is an important aspect. The governor's task force continues to meet on that. We've been able to target some of our federal funds into our housing trust funds and building opportunities for additional workforce housing.
You touch on the issue of child care. What needs to make that, what needs to happen to make that more of a reality for a lot of Iowans? And do you potentially see like the proposed Discovery Center projects in Decorah as one of those outside the box ideas that could be developed statewide and maybe even beyond?
Well, I certainly think that the Sunflower and the business community specifically coming together to work with Sunflower has been a game changer and an example for the state. And so I'm really pleased that they've had the recent announcement of the CAT grant funding of $500,000 that help on that project. The answer, is solving the problem around adequate childcare is broad based. It doesn't have one single solution, and so that I think speaks to why we had 9 separate individuals that want to step up and offer childcare in their own home or work in expanding the workforce in centers, and that may be will most likely include increasing the pay rate for that care, but that then triggers an increase in the cost of care to cover those pay increases. So we've worked through some legislation that's been enacted to increase child care assistance for low-income families, but we will continue to look at expanding the qualifications for that to make that more broadly available.
Was there anything you didn't get done last year that needs to get done this year in your mind?
Well, there are certain issues, and treatment of mental health and addiction is one of those that you continue to work on year after year. It's a long-term problem. It takes a long-term solution, and I think some dedication to build out treatment aspects that are going to work for a community. It's a partnership on both the state and local levels to meet the needs. And so it will continue to work on that area. I think, and the other is every year we work to put together a balanced budget, making sure that it's sound and sustainable over a period of time.
Are there any issues that we're not getting a lot of attention right now that maybe will get some attention this legislative session, or basically have we touched on all of them during this conversation?
Well, certainly an issue locally, but impacting statewide is the residential solar tax credit that is set to expire here on December 31st. But that was put into place, there was a funding cap, a maximum, and that cap's been reached. I'd certainly encourage people who put in residential solar to continue to apply for that. I'm working with other area representatives and Senator Clemish to make sure that we can fully fund those credits. That funding cap's been reached, but we're going to be working on a way to make sure that that promise is fulfilled, at least through December 31st of this year.
And would you like to see that continue?
I've certainly been supportive of the legislation we've had to continue that. There has been a position of that's been stated, I think that's stymied some of the work earlier, is that those incentives were put into place to help bring the cost down and make it affordable as more people built. And certainly the cost has dropped, to less than half to put up a new solar array compared to what it was just 10 years ago. And I think that these incentives have worked well. There continues to be a federal incentive in place. And so I think that we'll really struggle to extend that credit. I don't know that there's the appetite for that, but certainly I feel that we need to make sure that we've funded those credits we've had in place to date.
Mike, we appreciate you taking some time to talk about what's coming up in the Iowa legislative session as you guys get back to work next month. Thanks for the time as always, and Merry Christmas to you and your family.
Well, thank you, and same to you as well.
Mike Bergan, State Representative of the Iowa Legislature, about a month away from starting in Des Moines. Our thanks to the guest on this morning's program, Stephanie Fromm from Wenatchee County Development and Tourism, giving us an update on the Sunflower Child Care Discovery Center project. Brian Huinker from Group Benefit Partners in Decorah, our guy to talk to when it comes to all things health insurance. And we also want to thank State Representative Mike Bergan of Dorchester. Mike joined us. The Iowa legislature will be back in action here in the not too distant future. Don't forget, you can check out this show on YouTube so you can actually see the interesting people that we get to talk to week in and week out. We have that conversation week in and week out with a lot of interesting people, and you can actually see it. We understand that you might not be able to turn the radio on or turn the audio streaming on every Thursday morning at 9 o'clock. So we give it to you on demand. We post this on all of the Facebook pages for our Wenatchee Communications stations. And we post that usually on Wednesdays or early Thursday mornings. So you can find it there, or you can just go to YouTube like today, just search 12/16 Our Town program, and you can find it on YouTube so you can watch Our Town each and every week. Our thanks to our guests, our thanks to our sponsor, Decorah Bank and Trust, and most importantly, we thank you for tuning in, for logging on, or for watching Our Town on 94.9 and 99.1 The River.